Clemson and Florida State could potentially be joining the Big 12. How should Utah feel about that? We're also diving into UCF in our Big 12 preview series on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. And whether you're watching this on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, you guys can like and subscribe, rate and review. Love interacting with you guys in the YouTube comments. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports, they just stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You can visit FanDuel.com to get started now. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the Utah Athletic Department. And on today's show, we're previewing Clemson and Florida State in the Big 12. And we're also going to talk all things UCF, preparing for what's going to be a massive matchup, not this year, but for potentially years to come, with how good I feel like the Golden Knights could end up being for this Big 12 rivalry that might take shape. And in order to help me preview this Big 12 matchup, I want to have two special guests on the show. We're going to do something a little different on Locked On Utes today. That's right. We got the triple box here because I am bringing in the co-host of the Night Shift podcast and the managing editor of the Blck and Gold Banneret, that being Jeff Sharon, as well as the editor, Bryson Turner. Guys, appreciate you hopping on with me. And let's dive right into it, talking about this Clemson and Florida State potential edition. This all comes from a report from Jason Scheer, who's the senior editor and publisher of Wildcat Authority and the co-host of a Wildcats-themed podcast. He said, according to sources, there is internal belief that the Big 12, that Florida State and Clemson are likely to join the conference within the next year or so. My first thought is, whoa, like that would be insane to add two big level brand names and players in the college football game like Clemson and Florida State. I will say before we talk about the potential adding these two, I just haven't seen a ton of Jason Scheer's reporting before other big stories that break. I think he's doing a good job. I believe that he got this source. I'm just curious if it'll come to fruition because this isn't Ross Dellinger. Just, a lot of times there's news and reports that get thrown out there. And if you had to ask me as just someone like, hey, am I going to put money on Clemson and Florida State join the Big 12? I don't know if I would, but I think it's worth discussing. I think this would be a massive get for the Big 12 to add these two huge levels that would allow the conference to be just even more of a power, as it seems like the 12-team format tries to shift more and more to the Big 10 and the SEC. They want to even expand it further and maybe cut out like automatic qualifiers and all these kind of things that they want to do. Adding the level of Clemson and Florida State would make this conference even stronger, in my opinion. Jeff, how did you react to the news? Because that's from a Utah fan's perspective. I'm curious how you see it as having been in the Big 12 from a year and looking to continue to grow in it as Knights fans.
Well, that chanting you hear in the background is the directors of operations for every UCF sport, like cheering that that if this does happen, they don't have to spend nearly as much money in the budget on travel.
Yes.
That we were thinking initially. But, we are at UCF are veterans of the conference membership merry-go-round. As I'm sure you guys know, we were initially more or less interviewed by the Big 12 back in 2016 in a way, didn't get in when they decided not to expand, then got in when they did. We went from we joined what we thought was the Big East, and then it turned into the American. And before that, we were, in 2004, remember we were in the MAC for football only and the Atlantic Sun for everything else before joining Conference USA. So we're veterans of this, and we know rumors are rumors, man. You can, we don't take them as far as we can throw them. So, while, don't get me wrong, it would be awesome to have Clemson and Florida State in the same conference as UCF and the rest of the Big 12. I think a lot of us are like, we're gonna wait and see on this one because we also know how badly that Florida State and Clemson have been angling to get to possibly either the Big Ten or the SEC. And we don't know what those leagues really have to say. It's all really rumored out at this point. But then, So it's and also the other part that's kind of worries us a little bit is the legal entanglements involving those two schools in the ACC. That always tends to throw a wrench into the situation. So we don't know. We're taking a very cautious wait and see approach to this one, JT.
Bryson, how do you feel about it?
I agree in the sense that the UCF Knights, not Golden Knights,
Yes, of course.
the prospect of having two closer schools from a travel budget perspective would just be the athletic department's dream at this moment in time, because I think the only cons of UCF joining the Big 12 was the fact that the travel budget was probably going to go through the roof, and probably a little even more so now with the West Coast being added into the picture. Not that, the quality of the programs are amazing, but, you have to deal with the logistics. And so through that logistical perspective, having two more schools like Florida State and Clemson within a closer proximity to UCF will be amazing for all sorts of prospects involved. The other big thing I think is interesting in all this is that if these rumors are going about, because, rumors might not be, complete. It's not like they might not happen, but they kind of an indicate of talk. And if there's rumors that Clemson and FSU are going to the Big 12, that tells me that the Big 10 and the SEC might not want them. And they're done expanding. Because if they were in the prospect of getting him, we wouldn't be hearing about the Big 12 at all. And if Brett Yormark is anything, he is a good salesman. And I feel like that he is pushing these schools because he knows that the Big 10 and the SEC are going to be the ones that they want. But considering that there's only four power conferences now, one of them they're actively in a lawsuit against. The other two don't want them. So that only leaves the Big 12. And I think Brett Yormark knows that. So I think it's a genius move from that perspective. It'll benefit UCF quite a lot. I'd certainly welcome it. I just visited the Florida State campus for the NCAA regional recently. Great program they got over there, at least from a baseball perspective. So I would totally welcome it. But again, I don't trust rumors as far as I can throw them. Just wait and see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. 2 quick points to JT I wanted to add in. Number one, Bryson's right about Brett Yormark. He is not going to be caught not trying, which I think we all appreciate, right? Uh-huh. And just a phenomenal job that he's done so far in the relatively little time we've been in the Big 12 under his tutelage. He's just been phenomenal. And the other thing I think that it brings to mind here is Florida State, Clemson. There have also been some other rumors about maybe that opening the door for maybe 2 or as many as 4 other schools. We don't know which ones. Again, that's an even softer rumor than Florida State and Clemson do. But if that's the case, now we have and I've told my, Bryson and my compatriot Eric Lopez on our podcast before, we don't have a conference anymore. We have a league. And that I think will open up the new college football in terms of there are only going to be these sort of looser associations with it. I think looking eastward is a good idea for the Big 12 because, and granted, it's not what we all grew up with and know and love, but business is business. So if it's good for UCF and good for Utah, why should we stand in the way of it?
Exactly. So, yeah, I think we all agree. It would be still surprising to see it get to that point. And I know Greg Sankey today, as we kind of discussed already, right? He's the one out there no, we're not looking to expand. But I believe that
he's not until he is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Every college coach or whatever, no, or we just saw this with Texas A&M's baseball coach. No, I'm not going to leave anywhere. Oh, Texas is open. Cool. I'm gonna go to Texas now. This is the world we live in. It's hard to take every rumor or everything people say. You never know what's going to happen. But one thing is for sure, because of the boost the Big 12 brand that Clemson and Florida State would provide, it'd be a great addition to the conference. But one thing we're hoping already is going to be a boost to the conference is the continual growth of UCF's brand. Want to get to know one of the newest foes, or Utah's newest foe. We're all new for Utah's perspective, but get to know one of our new foes in a very intriguing end of the season matchup. Want to dive into the Knights a little bit more in one moment. But first, want to want to talk to you all about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports, they're just not sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So you can head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. And we're talking about FanDuel. We got Major League Baseball going on. So Bryson, Jeff, who are your guys' teams? Who are you kind of rooting for this year?
I'm a Yankee fan through and through, always have been.
So you're having a good, if you've been betting on the Yankees, you've been doing pretty well then. Bryson, what about you?
My dad passed on his Atlanta Braves fandom to me, so I would say the Braves.
Yes, I mean, can't go wrong with the Braves either like that. So two great brands right there off the bat. Utah, we're hoping to get an MLB team in the near future. So if you guys are listening to this and would love to bet on some of the MLB action with the All-Star break coming up and concluding here very soon, make sure you guys head over to FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, let's keep it going. We got to get to know the UCF Knights because we've gotten to know a lot of our other new Big 12 brands. We haven't gotten a chance to break down the Knights yet. So, Jeff, not even just this year, but what should Utah fans know about this brand of football that UCF likes to play?
Well, we are, like you said, you mentioned we're one of the newer foes in college football. That's actually literally true. We've only been playing football since 1979. We're one of the, I think we're only, Bryson, correct me if I'm wrong, we are the only program that has gone through every level of the NCAA. We started as a Division III school back in 1979, Division II, FCS back then 1AA, and we've been 1A since 1996, and finally made our way to the power conference level after many years of trying to get there. Our brand of football we pride ourselves on being the future of college football, as you will see in a lot of our branding. If the Utah fans who do make it to Orlando Thanksgiving weekend will see, we like to look forward. We're the new kids on the block. So we've gotten a lot of attention from things like the new uniforms we like to break out every year, especially for our famous space game where we take on our alternate identity as the UCF Citronauts for a game every year. That's one of our best traditions. And we like to play a brand of football that is really, really exciting. And it started, when after George O'Leary's retirement, who spent a decade here really building UCF into a football program from sort of one of college football's real backwaters. Like we were kind of an FCS team playing at the FBS level for a while there. We move up, George O'Leary retires after building this program, and then Scott Frost, undefeated season. Yes, we did win a share of the national championship in 2017.
I knew you'd bring it up.
We did do it. Alabama won a share of the
national. I'm not denying it. I'm not denying it.
I know. And I know you guys would have a history with Bama too. So I'm just saying, if you want to annoy them, please bring that up. 25-game win streak. Josh Heupel, a couple years here at UCF before he moves on to Tennessee. And now we have Gus Malzahn, who's helped us really boost our recruiting heading into the Big 12. Last year we were certainly competitive in the Big 12. I think we knew we would be if things all went perfectly. We had some injury problems. John Rice Plumlee, our starting quarterback at the start of the year, suffered a knee injury. He was out for a while. We had a number of other, just injury problems throughout the year. That was largely caused by the fact that we were a team that was just coming up to the Big 12 from the American. And 1v1, we have had the talent to compete at the power conference level for a while now. But what we learned last year was the depth is the real difference. Yep. And the only way to fix that is with recruiting. Gus has been working real hard on that. We have more 4-star recruits, 4-star and above recruits, I should say, than we have ever had in the history of the program. And the big change that came in after the graduation of John Rice Plumlee and he was signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers, incidentally. Bringing in KJ Jefferson as a super senior graduate transfer from the University of Arkansas. Big, tough, athletic guy. People were saying that, if you could go into a laboratory and create a quarterback for Gus Malzahn's offense, it would be Cam Newton.
Sure.
But if you were to go back in there and create another one, it would be KJ Jefferson. Big, strong passer, tough runner. And then don't forget about RJ Harvey coming back,
yes.
Our tailback from Orlando originally, actually went to Virginia as a quarterback, transferred over to UCF to become a running back. He's the closest thing I've ever personally seen to a human bowling ball. He's fast, and he is a ball of muscle. He's tough to bring down. Ask Oklahoma State about that last year when we beat them handily here in Orlando in a raging rainstorm. So, if all goes well, we have more depth than last year. We should be able, if all goes well, be a competitor right there with the preseason #1 in the Big 12, Utah Utes.
Hey, there you go. And Bryson, anything you want to add about the brand overall before we shift to the matchup this fall?
I think the best way I can describe the UCF brand is that it is a fighter. We're trying to speed run college football, I think, is the best way to describe it. And we've had the peaks, and it's like we've had all the peaks and valleys of a centuries-long college football program just in the span of a few decades. For comparison, for Utah fans, the Utes had been in the WAC for about 17 years when UCF started playing football and in Division III. And you rise all the way to the top, to the Power 5. No one's done that. It started from the bottom, and now we're here. So I think, if anything, UCF is a program that wants to prove that they belong. I think that's the best way that I can describe this brand and this program. And we want to be forward thinkers. We want to be the future. And it's sort of like an alternative, I would say, to the way that college football has sort of been, in a way, like the blue bloods of the Floridas and North Carolinas and Georgias and all that.
Yeah. And one little tip too, JT, we found out that if you want to incur the wrath of UCF's fans on social media, add the golden.
I know. I missed the layup to start the podcast. I deserve it. I deserve it.
No, it's cool. We get it. But because we got rid of it back in 2000. And I'm actually, by the way, I get UCF fans mad at me sometimes because I'm kind of sad about it. I graduated as a Golden Knight in 2005. So I kind of miss the adjective a little bit, but I'm like, okay, I get the scam, right? And the folks down in Tampa at South Florida, they love to yell at us about that all the time. They're like, oh, they called it, I'm like, but for all the well-intentioned Utah fans out there, just giving you a heads up. Mm-hmm. No golden. We don't want anyone getting hurt out here. We're just letting you guys know.
Well, I appreciate the heads up. And I'll be honest, all in the mistake, because I was worried about other things on my show. I was looking ahead on the notes, the other topics, and I made a mistake because I overlooked the name. But that's one thing Kyle Whittingham does a very good job with his teams. They do not overlook opponents. And let's say things go to par for Utah. They should be in the Big 12 championship game. Maybe there's a world where they have a spot clinched. There's a good chance Utah will be favored every game on their schedule. Oklahoma State, I'd say, is the exception to that. This is a loaded Utah roster with so many experienced and returning players. They don't have to play Kansas or Kansas State, let alone travel to them. So really, Oklahoma State's the only other top 4 team in the conference that they have to play this year. The schedule broke really well for Utah. Veteran-heavy team, good team. By the time they get to play UCF, everything should be on the table for Utah. But like you guys have alluded to, this is not your typical, just moved into the Power 4 team, when you have a quarterback like KJ Jefferson, who going into year 6, his last 3 years as a starter, 9,182 yards from scrimmage, which in just the last 3 years, which is absolutely insane. Then you guys mentioned RJ Harvey, right? 1,416 yards from a year ago too. You got your good number one receiver back in Hudson, 900 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns. O-line is pretty good, like should be good. Just want to make sure a couple of the things work there. Utah is actually in a very similar spot when you break down their offensive line. But then the question is the defense. Have some good individual parts there, but will some of those transfers be able to mesh and come in? I think that is the question. And look, when talk about who wins on Black Friday, I do expect Utah to come in and beat UCF. You talked about just that transition it takes to get up to this level. Utah had to go through that for a while. I think UCF's going to have a good year. I think they will improve on their record last year. But I think this Utah team is going to be very excited. This game is played at the end of November and not in late August like the last time they made a trip out to Florida. So I do expect Utah to take this game because of their overall depth and just some of the experience that they have, Cam Rising and co. being some of the many guys who've been with this Utah team for so long. But when you guys look at this matchup, what are your feelings about it? Jeff, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm first of all, when I saw that Utah was the opponent on Thanksgiving weekend, I was really excited because I personally, I'm a fan of college football. And obviously Black Friday was where we played our rivals from South Florida for a long period of time. I'm sure Utah fans remember the game back in 2017, the 49-42 game, where both teams came in with a combined 1 loss. UCF won on a late kick return by Mike Hughes. But yeah, the one team when I saw that the 4 Pac-12 teams were coming in that I was most excited about was Utah because I understand the common cause that UCF and Utah have as former non-power conference schools coming into power conferences. You guys laid the path that we and TCU have walked down. The other thing was, as we mentioned before, the consistency that Utah has shown as a program in the now 2 decades under Kyle Whittingham, I think has just been impressive, especially in this era of college football. You just don't see that anymore. And this is going to be a very difficult game for UCF no matter what. The things that UCF has going for them in this game, obviously it's at home. It's senior night. And this is going to be a big coming out party for UCF. This game will be on Fox in prime time. It'll only be the second time in UCF history that a home regular season game has been on network broadcast television in prime time. All right. The only other time was back in 2018 when UCF was in the middle of its 25-game win streak. College Game Day came to town for our game against Cincinnati, where we won. And that was the national coming out party of the bounce house, right? So this is our chance to show off the bounce house and UCF as a major conference team. And I think that if UCF is able to stay healthy, I know that there were some questions on defense, but we have some solid guys coming back, in particular on the front 7. Ricky Barber, Lee Hunter, our 2 anchors in the middle are going to be pretty solid. We do have a lot of questions, I think, in the linebacking core. But the guys who we brought in as transfers should be, especially the guy who I think is going to be a real game changer for UCF is Deshaun Pace, coming in from Cincinnati. He's going to be something else to see. But again, it's UCF's real MO is all about what Gus Malzahn wants to do on offense. Strike quick, but also ride the throttle, control the game with the running game. RJ Harvey is part and parcel of that. Hit downfield with speed. Xavier Townsend, you mentioned Kobe Hudson as well, who's stepping into the number 1 receiver role this year. Outstanding receiver. I will go out on a limb and say there's a very much non-zero chance, JT, that this game could decide a spot in the Big 12 championship game.
Okay.
I know that's
like
bold. It. I know that's bold, but you've mentioned how good Utah expects to be this year. They're picked number 1 in the Big 12. There's a really good shot if everything pulls together for UCF. Senior quarterback in KJ Jefferson, like you mentioned. This team is primed for a run if they can stay healthy.
I love it. I think they definitely got a chance when you look at the individual pieces. It's just some of those ones that were good last year come together this fall. Bryson, do you feel the same way?
I do. I mean, and what is UCF if not bowl? By the way, Jeff referred to the Bounce House. That is the nickname of our on-campus stadium, which its official name is FBC Mortgage Stadium, but it's called the Bounce House. And I want to make sure I say this for all the Utah fans that are either in the Florida area or would want to make the trip over. Whenever you hear Zombie Nation play, be prepared because the stadium literally shakes if there's enough people. And considering the Black Friday, I think the Bounce House is going to be packed. So when Zombie Nation starts playing, brace yourself because it is an experience unlike any in college football.
It's not in your head. The stadium really is shaking. That's the thing. And here's the thing, like we at UCF, and I think this is really, and I know you guys at Utah, Rice Eccles is just one of the underrated temples of college football, if you ask me. Here at UCF, we've developed our own, pretty strong home field advantage, and we love showing off, if you were going to ask UCF fans, like in terms of our brand, when the brand really took off is when we built the stadium in 2007. We used to play in downtown Orlando in the Citrus Bowl way back in the day, which is a good 20-minute drive, from the stadium. Or from the campus. Now we have this on-campus stadium. We love it when opposing fans come in because we want to send everyone home thinking, man, that team absolutely whooped us, but we had a great time. So that's our hope every single game is that you guys come to Orlando, have a great time, and go home with an L.
That is how Oklahoma State fans felt, by the way, this past season when they came to their space game, and even in pouring rain.
They forgot their rain gear, JT.
I was in the student section for that game, and it felt like a movie watching one of the toughest running backs in the Big 12 and Ollie Gordon get absolutely stymied. And that is why with Utah coming to the Bounce House later in this season, I am going to be very interested to see this running game matchup, not just from you guys' perspective, because Jaden Glover is quite the guy, but from a UCF perspective, Utah finished last year 4th in the FBS in rushing defense, and they're going against a Gus Malzahn offense that is I think is made to get yards on the run. You have RJ Harvey coming off I would argue the third best rushing season in UCF history, by the way. And you also have Penny Boone, another 1,000-yard quarterback transferring in from Toledo. And a dual threat quarterback in KJ Jefferson that Jeff mentioned was probably the most Cam Newton-like QB that Gus Malzahn has had since Cam Newton. So I honestly am very excited to see that UCF rushing attack meet that Utah rushing defense in the Bounce House, because I have a feeling that could end up being one of the big deciding factors of that Black Friday matchup.
Yeah, you guys, like you said, I think when most people think about this transition, you think it takes a little bit more time, but I remember Gus's quotes about how disappointing 6-6 was last year, and seems there's a lot of optimism that you guys could take that next step. There's a couple of games on the schedule, like the game at Florida. Obviously, Iowa State's another team that could be good, taking on Arizona. So it's going to be very interesting to see when these two teams meet up, how they come out in this game. A lot could be on the line. I'm excited to see it all play out. Just like I was really excited having you guys on the show. I appreciate you making the time to stop by. Jeff and Bryson, let everyone know where they can follow your stuff at.
Sure thing. Well, you can look us up at Blck and Gold Banneret.com. That's Banneret. We are the home of UCF sports on SB Nation and the home of not just football, men's basketball, but all UCF sports, which we're all really proud of here in Orlando. I am on Threads at Jeff Sharon, and Bryson is at It's Bryson Turner on X as well. And one last tip for you also, JT, Utah fans, keep an eye on the launch schedule at Kennedy Space Center, because if we're lucky, remember UCF's football stadium rests right on the same parallel as Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, only about 30 miles away as the crow flies. So if we're lucky, you guys coming into town, you could see a rocket go off from Kennedy Space Center right from the stadium. We've had that happen a couple times right after some games, and it's quite a spectacle, as you can imagine. We're really proud of it.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah, something spectacular, something to look forward to. That spectacle, if that's how it ends up, this game could end up being quite the spectacle. We'll find out late in November, but there's still a lot to preview when it comes to Utah. We got an official notice. We're only 2 weeks away from the start of fall camp. Football is here. Can't wait to begin this first season in the Big 12. Bryson and Jeff, thank you guys so much for joining me once again. That is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking more things Utah and Utah football.